If you're new, welcome to the show. If you're a longtime listener, welcome back. This is Leah Piper and Dr. Willow Brown, your hosts of the Sex Reimagined podcast.
And today we had a really amazing guest who is also doing a phenomenal collaboration with the one and only Leah Piper. So you're going to love this interview. Very, very cool. Cyrus Wild is a transformational coach and facilitator known for guiding individuals through deep personal transformation by helping them reclaim their primal power and embrace vulnerability.
That's right, you guys. Please tune in, turn on, and fall in love with my friend, Cyrus Wild.
Welcome to the Sex Reimagined podcast, where sex is shame-free and pleasure-forward. Let's get into the show.
Cyrus Wild, friend and colleague, welcome to Sex Reimagined.
Yeah, we are so excited to have Cyrus today and just learn about his phenomenal coaching, what he's up to in the world, what he's sharing with others in collaboration, and how he is supporting the movement of sexual awakening. So Cyrus, tell us a little bit about yourself and who you serve, how you love to serve, and how you got into this work to begin with.
Beautiful. Thank you for asking. Yeah, I'm Cyrus Wild. How I got into this work, in essence, around 2018, 2019. Yeah, my life, in essence, looked picture perfect with big, beautiful house, 5-bedroom, 4-bath home, business and bulletproof career, wife and some babies. And again, everything on the outside it was the American dream, right? But inside, there'd been something missing. Yeah, something missing for a long time. And I had this impression or assumption that after I achieved the next thing or got to the next step, that everything would be all as it should be. And come to find out it wasn't.
It was kind of like you were chasing that thing that was going to make you feel fulfilled inside, when all along it was inside, and you had to kind of stop in order to find it.
Yeah, you say it nicely, yeah. And
Gosh, yeah. I'm curious, was there like an implosion? Or was it just one day you woke up and said, oh, something's got to change?
How it looked in real life was, again, after a phenomenal holiday season, after New Year's, I ended up in the back hallway of this beautiful house that it took me a year and a half to remodel. And I knew every nail and screw and piece of insulation behind the wall. Every plate, every picture on the wall was meticulously picked out and put in place by me. Yeah, I ended up in the back hallway of this house, just uncontrollably bawling my eyes out.
What?
Because everything looked as it should. Yeah, but there was just still this big gaping hole, where it's a physical pain in my chest where my heart is. And yeah, I did what I thought I was supposed to. It still hurts quite a bit.
So what did you do at that point?
After that, eventually I got up, right? Because I'm here now.
You got off the floor.
Got off the ground.
You blew your nose. You dried your eyes.
Yeah.
How did things shift? It sounded like that was a real pinnacle moment. How did things shift after that for you?
Yeah, it started to look into therapy. People had mentioned therapy to me before, but it was almost how do you find somebody? How do you, there was a whole nother level of vulnerability in just even starting to look. And anyways, I started therapy. And at that point, nothing in my life made sense. My relationship didn't make sense. Career didn't make sense. Sex didn't make sense. And so I just started to seek in all the ways, through workshops, books, podcasts.
Who was one of the big sort of influential teachers or guides along that journey of seeking?
Charles Muir, for sure. And Leah. One of the things that was missing for me was this connection with my wife. On paper, we were it was a no-brainer on paper. However, there was this depth of connection that was missing. And again, I just always thought it would come after she finished maybe her second master's, or after I got promoted, or after we moved into this house, or after the kids, or after this. Or I just was like, okay, it'll come. Tantra had kept coming up, and one of the things that really grabbed me was like connection, and connection through sex, and like relieving the shame. So I signed us up for this beginner weekend.
So you guys went together to your first beginner weekend. When was that? What year? Do you remember?
I have no idea. I've keep saying things were like a year or two ago, when it's
Yeah.
like that's
Who
not
knows?
that's
Like
Must have been
COVID
time.
brain.
I know.
Yeah.
The timelines are all messed up these days.
But I remember you. I remember you at that weekend. So I want to say it was 6 or 7, 8 years ago, something like that.
Oh, wow. Okay. And how did it unfold? Because I did my first beginners weekend with Source Tantra with Charles and Leah as well, with my partner at the time, who I had a very similar experience with, where I was like, okay, we gotta, like, I need more depth. I need more connection. He would rise up to the occasion, and I would stick around longer. You know, he would always like rise up right as I was like about to walk out the door. And we did both the beginner and intermediate weekend. I think it was after the beginner weekend we started to have some of the best connection and deepest intimacy and best sex that we'd had in our, I think it was 6 years at that time. And then after the intermediate weekend, we almost fucking broke up again.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
I didn't know
You
that.
didn't know
I
that.
might have that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. How was it for you and
Yeah, I
your
wanna
wife
hear.
at the time?
I'll speak for myself. For me, it was just like fireworks going off. And for a big piece of it, it was like I found it, like, yeah, not to get woo-woo. It was kind of like, like God's here, like, like that's what it was for me.
Like you felt like you were finally in the right place, with the right
Yes.
community, and you're like landed.
Yeah.
I had that same
Yes.
feeling.
So with the practices of connection, and one of the things that was moving to me as well was, I remember at one point, like Charles took all the men into a room, and it was like, a father figure taking you in, and like, like this and this, and then he's telling you things, and then you laugh, and it's just, yeah, just every piece just meant so much. And for me, it was like I found, come to Jesus moment.
I love
For
how
me,
Charles
but
does that in the beginners weekend, separates the men from the women, and really like shows the men. It's like what the men never got from their fathers, never got from their grandfathers, their uncles, the education around how to be with a woman. He really does very well.
How to be with a woman, for sure. Yeah, it wasn't necessarily the same experience for the both of us. It may have had a more impact for me, and I may have taken it as a whole, and that didn't happen for her. So that it actually, there's a possibility it created a bit more
Created more
separation.
divide.
Yeah. And again, making anybody wrong.
Right.
Yeah, I think for her it was like, okay, some of the stuff is good to learn, but she was like, it seems like you believe in it.
You're like, I do.
Yeah.
Now what?
So was that kind of the beginning of the end, Cyrus, or not quite yet?
I think the beginning and the end had started before that, and it was likely a big reason for the implosion in me. So everything in life was, I was a muggle, a normal life.
Muggle
I had
to
a
magic
John
person.
I had
Another
a John
convert.
Deere.
It's interesting because for years working for Source Tantra, I started off as an event coordinator. And so I was handling the back of the room versus the front of the room. I would be answering phone calls, and people would often ask, is this going to save my marriage? I'm going to have to drag my partner here. Like, can you talk to my partner and convince him to come? And I always have to tell people, look, Tantra does not promise to save relationships. What it will promise is to help you get closer to your truth. And to live from your truth is really how we most desire to live, because then we're connected to our authenticity. And sometimes people will journey with us through that. They'll journey within themselves, and then the relationship moves forward. Sometimes that doesn't happen, and we find out that our truth is telling us that we're gonna go different ways. But hopefully we'll have a few more tools to do that more amicably. Maybe we can still support the love. It's just the love changes. And it's not a relationship on it's not a course on how to do that. But it was one of the things I was always very careful to tell people to measure their expectations. So then what happened next? How soon before you guys decided to split ways and change the configuration of your relationship?
After that weekend, we continued with other things like couples counseling and
all the things
we
one
tried
does to save a marriage.
all the things one does. Went on trips together, like, just us alone and etc. Yeah, I think maybe eventually by 2021, it was official that we were split. I stayed in the house for about a year to give my children a chance to transition. So there was many bedrooms. So I slept in the back bedroom to give them time to adjust before I moved out to another house that we had. And then the legal process took a little bit. I had phobia of like courts and that kind of thing. So I was kind of the holdup. We had went through a conscious uncoupling, and we had coaches, and we're the only people in the courtroom that didn't have attorneys. And it broke my heart to be in the courtroom and see people who were married and had houses and businesses and children together, and they couldn't even talk to each other, that the attorneys would talk. And like, there was this thing, like it literally broke my heart to be in there and see that and feel that. And
Yeah, I bet.
the disregard for relationship, And then just one more thing.
Yeah.
So like when we finally did go to the court process, I had decided to do a cross-country trip with a new partner at the time. They flew from the Netherlands for us to drive cross-country, but we had finally got the date for the divorce. So I drove I was in Washington State. I flew back to go to court to get divorced for a few hours, and then I got back on the plane to Washington State, did like a workshop, and then drove back to Massachusetts. So,
Wow, that's quite a journey. Like in the middle of a
yeah.
trip with a new person. Excuse me, I've got to fly back to the other side of the country
Right.
to
I'll
sign
be right
these
back. Gotta get a
divorce
divorce.
papers so that I can be fully present with
Yeah.
you. It's a tantric move,
Yeah.
okay? Trust me.
Would you recommend the conscious uncoupling? Was that really supportive to the transition that the two of you were making? Curious what the impact of that was.
It was incredibly supportive during the process, and then for me afterwards, I stuck with the coach a little bit after that, and I would recommend it because in my judgment, the divorce process, the court process, if you didn't have an idea of like something to do to the other person while you're pissed off, they'll give you some ideas on some interesting things that you could do to the other person. So to have an anchor, to realize this is somebody that you do love. It's just the love has changed and you're transitioning it, and it's not somebody to destroy now. And this whole container that you created is still good to try to keep that intact as much as possible.
Yeah, I think that conscious uncoupling work is so, so valuable when you've got kids, you've got, your finances intertwined with each other. And so I'm curious at what kind of relationship and communication you and your ex-wife are in these days. Like, how are you guys doing now?
Yeah, so we were really good for at one point. Now it's kind of fractured.
Okay.
But yeah, it's like
Ebbs
I
and
think
flows.
yes.
Do you think it could flow again? Do you think you guys could use some of these practices to bring them back? Remember, we're still consciously uncoupled.
I think with time, yes. And yeah, it's like I was with this person for almost 20 years, whether it's wounds or connection or like whatever it is deep. So if there is pain, there's like a deep pain, and like it needs time.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I can't
so,
force us to be good all the time, Yeah.
yeah, I'm sure a lot of people right now can really relate to what you're sharing. I think it's such a complex experience going through a divorce and figuring out kids. And you guys are both like across the world. You're no longer in the United States. So there's
Mhm.
all of that that's happening. How does your experience of like, finding this hole inside of yourself that you need to fill? Like you got the call, there is something that needs to change.
Mm.
And finding yourself in this position now where you're really supporting people going through their own transformation. How does that inform how you hold space?
Maybe to give a little bit of insight of like what it's like, and maybe give a little bit of insight of like what my life is actually like right now. Yeah, and this is kind of the most I've talked about this stuff in the divorce. Like, and I usually didn't call it a divorce. I call it uncoupling, just because I had so much stigma around the word divorce. From young, I just always expected myself to be married once to one person, have children with one person, and just have this nuclear family. Like, I always imagined myself to be married once, one person, one family, da 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 da. So when it became clear that the relationship was going to dissolve, most of my work was on that, on not feeling like I was a failure. And I did Landmark, and that was like my basis for like Landmark Worldwide, was to try to shift my paradigm. And I started to learn about impermanence and like, and about clinging. And so to get to a point where I could surrender maybe what life was showing me at the moment, and to not just learn to understand impermanence, reading about it, or like, like Audible or something, to like truly live it. Yeah, it was like a cliff jump. Once I jumped off the cliff, it almost started to feel like anything was possible. I had started a new company out of the blue. I started to travel all around the world and shift the idea that I needed to be fixed in one place. I started to explore different relationship structures. Like every area of life, like nothing was off limits in terms of what could be shifted. So now, over this last year, I've lived in Sweden. I've spent some time in the UK. I lived quite a bit in Costa Rica, Amsterdam,
Brazil.
Brazil.
You're quite the nomad
Right.
now. So you're really like took that to heart. Which reminds me of something that I've heard you talk about that I think is really interesting. And that is your brand is Feral Soul. And really find that word very interesting, like this wild, feral part of ourselves that we often suppress as we become more domesticated because we're
Mm,
so driven as animals for security and safety.
mm,
And we create these huge structures, right? It's
mm,
like, we just want to get safe. We just want to get safe. We just want to find the person we love. And then life can
mm,
begin. And then we'll be okay. And everything will rise from that. And then
mm,
those who are probably listening who've been in long-term relationships, you start to feel like there's got to be something more than just this mundane, safe, secure feeling. You don't want to let it go, but
mm.
something inside of ourselves somehow gets lost in that domestication. I'm just wondering, and those are my words, but what are your words to describe that?
Yeah, when I bring up like domestication, it's necessary, right? We as humans, we've evolved with civilization and tribe and community, and it's a positive thing. And there's the possibility that we suppress a good amount of ourselves to to fit into these ways of living. And for me, a lot of the messaging around relationship and to be good maybe came from religion. And I'm not saying religion is bad, but how I interpreted it was, I remember learning about just even the thought of another person is a sin. And I wanted to be a good husband. So like I had this internal conflict of just even the thought of another woman is a sin, and I want to be good. And like, and we're both animal and spirit, right? So like I was almost trying to kill or suppress or cage my animal so that I could be good in this relationship and how I showed up in the world. And because I was suppressing in one part of myself so much, my wife started to no longer be able to feel me. The people around me couldn't feel me. For me specifically, I started to gain a lot of weight because, like I need the pleasure. I need to get it from somewhere.
Right. God, that's so relatable,
Uh,
right?
And so the feral soul is getting back in touch with that animal part, that part of me as a man, again, within consent is able to take and ravish a woman and like unapologetically. And for me, there was a process of getting back in touch with that part of myself. So say for like a beginner's weekend where you learn maybe like eye gaze and an attunement, there were other containers that I put myself in where I was able to get in connection with my predator. So to have my predator and my animal in tune with, maybe we'll say the higher with like maybe like a tantra with like the eye gaze. And so like I'm in pursuit and I'm attuned at the same time.
Yeah, that's hot.
Uh,
Listen up, men out there. That's hot. Do that. So is this what you're teaching men to do, Cyrus? Tell us. Tell us what you are teaching men these days.
Yes. Another development is feral fusion, something that I'm working with Leah. It's a joint venture, a combination of both masculine and feminine. So whether you're a man or whether you're a woman, there's access to these parts. Like there's a male predator, maybe there's a female predator that somebody needs to get access to, the ability to receive and to give in an attuned way. So both Leah and I are teaching men and women how to have this dance and both open up in ways that maybe they never thought was possible.
It sounds like a perfect sort of union of the yin and the yang within a single human being, no matter what their gender is. Like to be able to find that primal, animalistic, desiristic, that just like I want to ravish you, that thing, because women actually love to be ravished. If they can
Yes, they
drop
do.
into that place inside of themselves of letting go of control and surrendering and allowing and trusting and receiving, and with being attuned with each moment, being really present with like what is going on. So you're not just ravishing blindly, but you're actually ravishing with your eyes open, with consciousness, with intention as well. Like, what is the intention behind this ravishing? Is it just to like awaken your own animalistic instinct? Or is it also to, awaken something in her? Is it awakening something in both of you? So I'm so curious. I feel like, after the whole Me Too thing that happened, so many men are afraid to ravish, like they need an invitation these days, it's like they don't want to overstep their boundaries.
They don't want to get in trouble.
They don't want to get in trouble. Yeah.
Self-preservation.
Totally.
Yeah. I'll continue to use myself as an example. Again, this is a part of me that I still continue to work on being comfortable with because it's a part of me that it carried so much shame for like most of my life, whether, like I said, attraction to another woman, feeling like I'm not good because of that, or having the desire to take a woman that I'm with. Eventually I became a nice guy, right? So like as a recovering nice guy and all of it, with being in these containers, maybe at first treating a woman, and try not to take this out of context, like this princess, this goddess that like was on a pedestal, to I don't know what we can say on the podcast.
You can say it.
You
Just
can
say
say
it.
whatever you want. Yeah.
Say it.
And you
Say
can
it
always
out
tell me to
loud.
edit it
Say
out. So
proud.
it's all good.
Yeah.
I don't have to take risks.
Yeah, to learn to learning that, like some women want you to, you know, tie them up and slap them and, put a butt plug inside of them. And like it's a revelation for me. And I think sometimes for both sides, right? On what we think is right and good. Yeah.
Yeah. I can say, we had a coaching client recently, and one of the things that's really interesting is we have people take a quiz so they can really find inside of them, start to already feel into the things that are subconscious motivators that are helping co-create this world outside that either they want or they don't want. And most of the time it's creating conflicts that oppose each other. For instance, we had this wonderful client who scored in 2 different categories. One was he was the grounded nurturer, and he also had the defiant spirit. And the part of him that was a grounded nurturer, one of the things he really craved was to be with like a sane, healthy, feminine partner. Someone who was safe and nurturing and loving and really was like this person who would listen and was kind of a caretaker. I mean, lots of us want that. And then there was another defiant spirit part of him that liked kind of sowing chaos. He liked sort of breaking the rules. And so in so doing, that could really take that partner and jangle them, make them anxious about what's going to happen next. And so kind of finding that part of him that wanted 2 opposing things at the same time. And how can we co-create that in like an interesting and a healthy way where that stimulates arousal and desire and also creates a sanctuary at the same time. Also providing a place for him to pour his love into while also making things a little dangerous. And how does one really honor that part of themselves? And then how do you not only honor what's true inside of yourself, but then try to explain that to future partners so that you're co-creating it in a conscious way? That's sort of the material that we're really diving into, is to take a look and uncover parts of ourselves that want to be understood. So we're not just operating from, all these blinding
The shadow.
subconscious stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well said.
Exactly. Well, I love this. I mean, I think this is gold because this is so what everyone struggles with. That's what you were sitting with in your marriage, Cyrus, is like, okay, there's one side of me that wants this, perfect life. And, what side of me is that? Even questioning that, like, where did that side come from? Is that really even yours? Is it from society? Is it from your family? Where did that come from? And then there's these other sides of us that we don't even know what's there. Or we might know, through quizzes like you guys are putting together, like these different archetypes that seemingly are opposing each other. I want, one of the big things for me, I'll share, is like, I want to be in the spotlight. My North Node is in Leo, but my South Node is in Aquarius. So I want to be in the spotlight and I want to live in a cave. I want both. So can I have like, that sort of like, here's the gifts, here's what I have to offer the world, here's what, I think is important, and here's how I can like, it feels good for me to share my gifts and my knowledge and wisdom with the world. And at the same time, I need a lot of like solo time and downtime and alone time. And so I think that everyone has these really opposite, like this disparity inside of themselves, that when we can start to reconcile and bring those parts of ourselves back together and start to have a conversation. What were these 2 archetypes you called them, Leah?
The grounded nurturer and the defiant spirit.
Yeah. And so if the grounded nurturer and the defiant spirit are starting to have a conversation with each other about how to coexist inside of this one particular client that you guys are working with, then he's actually got a fighting chance of creating that, co-creating something with somebody else. Otherwise, he's really not aligned enough inside of himself to manifest or attract somebody that he could play with in that.
Yeah, there's a lot of sabotaging opportunities arise.
Totally.
In
It just
that
becomes a big shit
confusion.
show and you're all confused inside.
Yeah. And so the thing that Cyrus are having, where we're having fun exploring, and and there's things that are happening within myself as a result. and Cyrus can speak to this too, is how do we hold those posts for the masculine and the feminine? And what's the voice of the feminine? What does she have to offer that may be different than the voice of the masculine as we hold space for people as they're exploring their own inner masculine and feminine, and how different that feels? I mean, after each call, Cyrus and I kind of we download for a few minutes and go, okay, how was that for you? Where are we heading next? What worked? What didn't work?
So where are you guys with holding those sort of polar posts, the masculine, feminine within the client, the yin and the yang?
Well, for me, it's more just bringing up tenderness within myself. So it's me having a reflection of myself, experiencing myself in new and in revealing ways. I'd have to ask the actual client what it's like for them, but I can just tell you that what's interesting for me as a practitioner is noticing myself in these experiences, noticing what I liked, what worked, maybe what arose that's still tender and alive in my system, that is being called to sort of look at in a new way. What about for you, Cyrus?
Yeah.
How I've experienced it is sometimes as we show up, like a transmission will come through. I remember one client was sharing something, and it was a male client, and a transmission came through Leah, and it was almost like she was speaking for this like archetypical feminine energy. And because it was all three of us on the call, we got to pause with that and just kind of like take it separate and look at it and feel it. And because for this specific dynamic where I was a man and we were able to like talk about it in real time, he was able to digest it in a way that he had a lot more empathy for the woman in his life that he was having a thing with in that particular conversation. That's one way that it shows up. Also, what has happened sometimes with male clients is there almost naturally be this nurturing energy that comes from Leah on the call that the person may need. And then I will come in with kind of like
Big Daddy shows up.
A bit more penetrative energy, like, okay, now that you're nurtured, it's time to move forward now.
Yeah.
So, where there's the possibility that, and if you probably had us individually, we both have masculine, feminine, etc. But where there's the possibility that maybe somebody could get stuck in that nurture, like the whole Jungian thing where, or Freudian thing where you're attached to mommy, you don't want to let that energy go. And then there's the masculine to
pierce,
to penetrate and move the person forward. Or if you just had all masculine, maybe again, men can nurture. But this, I'm just making a point where, maybe it might be too penetrative and too moving forward and not enough acknowledgement of a certain thing. So with us both, we're usually able to feel each other enough to titrate and give the person the right amount of energy at any given time based off of what they brought up.
Yeah. One of the things I've really enjoyed working with our female clients is Cyrus will be reflecting what they said back to them so they can hear themselves in what they shared. And he often uses a word that they said, but I kind of cringe. And then that's the exact thing that that woman picks up on. And what's so brilliant about these women is they go, God damn it, I don't really like that you said that. But you know what? I need to look at that. And then they take that and like that's one of their biggest takeaways from the call is like this word that I would have been reluctant to accentuate.
Can you give us an example of this word?
It's right on the tip of my tongue. Dominate. So this one female client, she was noticing that she kind of likes to dom her partners in the bedroom. But she noticed that she was unconscious of how much she was dominating the whole relationship and how that was preventing her from really having the relationships that she wanted. And there was some way that Cyrus highlighted that in what she shared. It was like she wanted to just keep that word in the bedroom, but he brought it out in such a way that she had to acknowledge, ah, shit, I
I
am taking that
dominate
into
in
other
all
realms.
ways.
Yeah, that's not serving me. And so like by the end of the call and what they share by the end of the call and what they got, that they're taking that and they're going to chew on that for a while. They're going to use that information that got reflected, that came from inside of them. It wasn't coming from Cyrus. He was just sharing what he heard. And they're going to marinate in that. They're going to really take a look and be reflective about, what does this mean to me? And where do I need to become more conscious? And what do I want to change moving ahead? And then that ends up accelerating the next session.
Now, you guys mentioned 2 archetypes. Are there more?
Most certainly.
Well, we would love to hear about
Yeah.
all these different archetypes and where they originated from and what they all mean.
There's 12 archetypes. We're not going to share all of them here. You're going to have to take the test.
Yeah.
There's 12 archetypes. They're indirectly connected to the 12 Jungian archetypes. The building of these archetypes, it's informed by how you find safety in connection. So like Leah was mentioning, previous client, in a dynamic, sometimes we find ourselves victim to our relationship. But within these categories, as we have awareness and we're conscious of it, we can choose it. So maybe some of us have some troublesome ways that we find safety in relationship, but we don't make anything good or bad. But with the archetype test, we have this information. So how do you find safety and connection? Another one is, how do you turn up and down the passion in your relationship or connection? Yeah, with the passion. Maybe there's too much passion and it's like not functional because you guys have this push and pull and you fight, but then you're together. And so maybe the passion is too high. You need to bring it down. Or maybe there's no passion at all and you need to turn it up. So we get that information. So safety, passion. A separate one is arousal. Like what are some of the keys to your arousal and how to tap into it? And there is a distinction between the passion and the arousal. And then the fourth one is, in essence, I can't think of another way to describe it, like how you can feel love, like how you can actually receive it and give it.
Finding the ways that it lands, so that when you understand, how does it land in me? How does it land when I'm trying to give it? Is that working? And through all of that, what gets developed is communication. Is when you start to know yourself, then you have the ability to teach others how loving you works. Because you start to discover what opens your body, what closes your body. And so in all these realms between feeling safe and being able to communicate and feeling arousal and then also feeling alive, having passion to live a really turned on life is something we all crave, because we may not know the words for it. But like Cyrus said at the beginning of this conversation, most of us know at some point in our life that something's missing. And the hunger for it and the acknowledgement of it, it's almost like a call from the universe that you can't not answer. It gets too loud. And so, finding places that people can come and discover those answers, that yes, there is something more. And it's an inside job. And when you learn to tap into that, then you can cultivate it and then you can co-create it out in the world.
Yes. And so when you're helping people identify these maybe more unconscious places inside of them, and then I'm curious, like on these calls, are you doing a little bit of role playing? Or are you just sharing with them what that sort of, shadow side of them is and how it's showing up in their life? And then are you giving them any kind of like take home work where they are, I don't know, journaling or communicating differently through that particular archetype that they were not aware of before?
So it's first we start off with awareness. First we start off with where a person is at. where you're at in life, like what do you have going on. Typically that needs to be shared first and an understanding of that. And then based on what somebody wants or desires, there's kind of an unraveling of these areas that we spoke about. There's not necessarily role playing. There's a depth of awareness that we achieve, especially with the foundation of the archetype quiz. And for the beginning, a good amount of the call is this awareness. And I say this in a way that, like, when Leah mentioned one of the woman clients that we had, so she likes to dominate in the bedroom. And I think something along what I said is like, okay, so you like to dominate men. So in fact, how much work it actually takes to truly be aware of, to have a decent amount of self-awareness to do anything, I think is underrated. And maybe some of the homework things and are good, but it might be just kind of like, I give you something so you feel like, yeah, part of the coaching handbook, but 95% of it is the awareness, and we are a mirror to help you get there. And then there'll be tools to help you choose for yourself. So it's not typical.
I would say that we're really coming from the place of everyone has all that they need, and all that they need they have. It's helping them resource that inside of themselves, because the truth is most people are more likely to take their own advice than they're going to take our advice. They may love our advice too. Our advice may be golden, but that doesn't mean they're going to take steps and make it actionable. But when it comes from deep inside of you, there is this inflection point that drives somebody's actions because it comes from within, and that's way more powerful. So sometimes it's hard not to have an agenda. You see someone and you see their light, and you also see their shadow, and you think, oh, I can just drive them over here. You got to be careful of that. That's one sometimes I struggle with. And there are sometimes people don't have a resource. They're missing a tool or a technique. And so then it's our job to provide them with a tool or technique that they can then internalize and use if it's right for them. And so you offer that, and they can explore it and take it from there.
It sounds like what you guys are really doing is sort of providing these ahas through reflection, through conversation, through, helping them to see places inside of themselves that are ruling their lives, that they're making choices in the present current time of their life out of these unconscious patterns and things that have been, causing them pain at the same time.
For sure. The transformation that takes place within our work based on where the person is at, and we're not trying to change anybody, or we don't have this ideal way that you should be. We're taking you possibly of like what your makeup is at the moment. And one example that I'll give is, say you take a stereotype that some people view as negative, right? Stereotype of a woman that is a gold digger, is perceived as a gold digger, and she likes to receive gifts from men, and there's the possibility she could be a little anxious, and she needs lots of reassurance. And somehow in their dynamic, they end up in arguments where maybe there's some charged energy from the man, but in the way it comes across now, it's not healthy. But maybe this same stereotypical woman goes through our program, and we normalize the fact that one of the ways that she receives love is by receiving nice things, and she has a standard, and that's okay to have this standard and to receive these things. And where she gains this awareness, this embodied awareness, where she's able to ask for this, like, this is how I need to be loved. So then she can discern who are the right people to allow in her life to love her in this way. And there's this attachment thing that's out there, and like maybe she could be categorized as anxious. And again, there's nothing bad in our realm. So in our realm, that just means she needs lots of reassurance. And as she has a better understanding of that, and uh, she doesn't feel as though it's bad, and she's able to ask for it. Now she's with a man that gives her quality gifts in a way that she can appreciate and know that she's appreciated. This man can show her attention in a way, whether it's text messages or whatever it is, right? In a way that she feels safe with this person, and probably surprised now she's in a secure attachment, right? But anyways, and then maybe in the past she needed to get these gifts in an unconscious way, or she needed to be a certain way to find out if this man truly loved her, and maybe it was like could be described as acting out, and these arguments took place. But she's in her power now, and she knows one of the ways to turn up the passion in the bedroom is if he grabs her and calls her a gold digging bitch, but like, but it's like it's conscious, it's within their container, and it's juicy, and he loves it and she loves it. And yeah, we took this negative, so-called negative stereotype, and now there's like this thriving, juicy relationship that
Yeah.
works.
It's like you take something that maybe was judged as shallow, and then you see just how deep it is, how much safety is interwoven in it, how much arousal is connected to it, how much it's a turn on and then there's a turn off. And how do you leverage that? And so they all start to work together, and you see this thing that you thought was shallow that actually is very deep and is sort of like a key to opening one's essence if you're willing to courageously look at it.
Yeah, almost an unbreakable bond where maybe before it was relationship after relationship.
I think it's really, a testament to getting really honest with yourself, getting really like true to yourself and your needs and your desires within relationship, because we all grow up with like, well, this is what relationships should look like. And you should bend and morph and change yourself a million different ways so that you can fit into this paradigm. And how well is that working? Like, what's the divorce rate these days? I don't know. And there's no shame in it. There's, it's just we're all starting to configure different styles of relationship, even, like I've recently been exploring more non-monogamous path, and some people will kind of start having conversation with me, and they'll be like, oh, so you're polyamorous. And I've always had like such an aversion to polyamory, like, hell no, I don't have energy or time. I've got too much of my sole purpose to focus on. Because I know that polyamory does require a lot of time and energy and parameters and a lot of conversation and boundaries and skill and all of that. And so I've always sort of been really not wanting to take on that label, and still have like this sort of knee jerk, like initial reaction. No, I'm not that, However, at this moment in my journey, it's like, I just want the relationship that's going to work, I don't care. You can call it whatever the hell you want to call it.
Yeah.
I just want the one that's going to work for me. And so in creating that, everyone has to be really honest with themselves. So, I mean, maybe I will take on this gold digging bitch because it sounds pretty hot. Maybe I'll try that archetype on,
Keep
and
that
I
shit
think,
out, girl.
yeah, I think there's it can be really fun to learn about ourselves. It can be really fun to try on different archetypes, different masks, different, is this something that I might enjoy? It never even occurred to me before, but it's possibly something that could be really empowering for an individual when they try on something that just wasn't even in their consciousness at all before. And I think it also expands and opens up what you can co-create with others, whether that's in a monogamous or non-monogamous situation.
Yeah, so what's next for you, Cyrus? We've got the coaching work. Is there anything else that you want to share before we wrap up? Anything we haven't asked you?
For sure. If you're in the Nosara area, even if you jump on the plane, we have
Where's in Costa Rica?
Nassar's in Costa Rica. Sorry, everybody knows, right? How do you not know? A 3-night Shibari temple immersion called Soul Ties. I brought in an amazing facilitator named Katie Bird, who's going to take us through a 3-night temple where each night we deepen into devotion, and the rope is the means of devotion. We will all gain this shared language. Yeah, so in regards to devotion, in regards to polarity, dominant submission, but not in overt ways. Like you'll get it into your body without saying this is what this is. It's like this sweet nurturing, this depth, there's
For people who don't know what shibari is, what would you say? Would you define it?
It's where you tie somebody up.
It's a Japanese art
It's a
form.
Japanese art form
very
of
beautiful.
tying. Yeah, it's super hot and super
Yeah.
sexy.
Yeah, and really
It
just
feels
stunningly
good. Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah. By the time this airs, you'll be able to get on the VIP list in order to take the Feral Fusion quiz, which will help you define some of your archetypes. So we'll make sure that that's in the show notes. So for those of you who are curious about the quiz, you'll have access to it.
I cannot wait to take this quiz. It's so exciting, y'all.
Yeah.
Thanks for putting it together and for leading the path in helping people discover these unconscious shadow sides of themselves so that they can really co-create the relationships that are going to work for them.
Yeah. And check out cyruswild.com and check out his Instagram. What's your Instagram?
Cyrus Wild _
Great. Check him out on Instagram, and he'll be on our YouTube channels. Thank you so much, Cyrus. So excited for everything you're creating in the world.
Beautiful. Thank you for having me.
Now, our favorite part, the dish.
Dishing it up on Cyrus. It's so fun that you guys are doing this collaboration together, and I'm curious like how that came about. Did you guys just start chatting at one of the Source Tantra events about it, or was it more off, on your own about it? How did that?
No, he would reach out to me every couple of years. And I think he had a couple discovery calls,
Okay.
and it was always just sort of waiting for the most ripe time.
Gotcha.
And then he did my Love Pro mentorship program.
Uh-huh.
And as he was cultivating Feral Fusion and working on retreats and deep dives for men, and then we started to take a look at what that would look like for women, and then this other segment of launching his coaching business, and then we just started to collaborate and try some things on. It was really fun to start. We did a couple experimental coaching calls with some of the people he was encountering at all these different workshops, and then he developed this quiz, and it was like, well, this is so fun, and this is so interesting, and look how that came alive, and look how that got revealed, and then I'd always wanted to have sort of some kind of program with a male counterpart so that we could play with the dynamics of the masculine feminine wisdom, and not only sort of modeling how to be in right relationship as two facilitators, but then also seeing what wisdom could be illuminated by having access to both, those two polarities while taking someone on a journey. And so that's kind of what gave birth to the whole idea.
I love it.
We were both ready at the right time.
Yeah, finally the timing aligned. I love that. Great. Well, it sounds like he's been on quite a soul-seeking journey and has discovered a lot about himself in a short amount of time. And so I'm sure teaming up with you, who has been on this path for a very long time, it feels really, aligned and supportive to both of you. You've been on it for so long. You're always kind of like, what's the next fresh, like fun thing that I can play with, and for him, I imagine there's sort of like, oh, well, Leah's seasoned, so that brings some real credibility and also just some sense of, groundedness to it.
Yeah. One of the things I really am attracted to about Cyrus, which feels like a good fit, is when you're working with someone who kind of has this alpha male energy. He's sort of the strong silent type too, So there's a way and he used the word penetrative energy. He has this penetrative, piercing, yet quiet, still. It's like all the things you think about when you think about masculine essence. The tall mountain, the stable tree, the ship that can weather the storm. All those things come really naturally to him. And what that does to me is it helps me settle. That it lets me settle and rest in my feminine in a way that I'm not always given opportunity to, because I have to hold both, in
Right.
my
Yeah, I could
world
see.
and in my work in particular.
I
And
could
I
see that.
love the opportunity of leading, facilitating, teaching, and coaching from my feminine versus my masculine.
Yeah.
So when someone's automatically holding that, it shifts a part of what's available to me.
So I love that.
And it can be challenging, right? Especially
Yeah.
when you're sort of used to your style.
You're like, I'm gonna dominate
Yeah.
this shit.
But I'm noticing that I really it's a great opportunity to sit back and, and I've had other colleagues in the past, TJ Bartell in particular, who that was another really lovely dynamic when we would co-facilitate, the Source Tantra teacher trainings and we would work privately with couples. It was another thing I could really lean into, and I haven't had access to that in quite some time. I'm always kind of looking like, who's the next Sheba post, if you will, that I can play that dynamic with.
Yeah.
Even in my collaborations with a lot of women, I tend to hold the masculine post. I tend to
Yes,
be the
you
one
do.
that's resourcing the form and
Yeah.
bringing things in
Yeah.
to form. And then usually my female counterpart is at resourcing the mystery, as we sort of say, and pulling the mystery in.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nice to be able to have a chance to play with that polarity.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anyone listening out there even knows what the hell I'm talking about. We're
Well, I know
talking
exactly.
shop right now.
Yeah, and I know exactly what you're talking about, and I'm so curious, like how our dynamic will shift as you dive deeper into this dynamic with Cyrus, because of getting to experience more of that feminine energy and essence flowing through you as you're coaching, as you're working with him, because we also do co-coaching for some of our clientele. And and we do it differently also. We don't do it all on the same call together. It's more like a tag team. And so it'll just be really interesting to this is one of the beautiful things, people, about non-monogamy. I'm not sitting over here going like, oh, she's doing something else with someone else. Like, I fucking celebrate it. I'm so happy, and I'm so grateful for whatever it will open up within you, Leah, that will then shift and open up within us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it also gives me a chance to gain a little bit of perspective in my relationship with Matt.
Yeah, right.
As all these relationships do, right?
Yeah,
Like just the
exactly.
other day we were coaching another woman, and she was talking about being visible, being understood, and like how important someone asking questions is, so that she feels like you're there with me. You're just not overriding my feelings or my thoughts or the way I look at things, which has been sort of a dynamic. And one of the things she reached in her deep desire to be understood was realizing that she's gotten feedback many times, which is, you're hard to understand.
Okay. Yeah, I gotta
So it's like,
listen to
here's
that.
this thing you really want, and whatever, there's a lack of clarity that's happening in the transmission of this desire of being able to speak clearly. And what she was able to illuminate for herself, which I got to take home with me, was, I need questions. I need someone to be curious. I need someone to help draw forth this understanding, to want to understand me enough that you're willing to ask questions. And we've talked about this on the show before, but one of Matt's wounds is feeling invisible. And he's very good at asking me questions. It's not always he's asking me questions so that I'll ask him questions. And I realized that I am not as generous with that, of asking, what do you think about this? And what do you think about the book that you're reading? And what is that bringing up for you? And when you had that conversation with so-and-so, what meaning did you make out of that? And, what's important to you about this?
It's very interesting, Leah, that you don't not as generous in this with Matt, because you are the question queen in my world, like in my experience of you, like always digging deeper, and also like wanting to know the timeline and really understand like oh, well, when did this happen? And then when did that happen? And how did this flow? And how did that flow? And I think that, when we get into long-term relationships, it can be really easy to like, the thing that we're so good at to not bring it quite as much into a relationship. So I love that, that this relationship with Cyrus is also awakening that and inspiring that even more in your
Well,
marriage.
yeah. And which Matt would be so pissed if he heard this. Maybe someday he'll tune in. Sometimes he listens to some of the episodes, but not all of them.
Right.
But I know that that's also a beef he has. Like, well, you do this for everybody else. Like, if I'm
Right.
the most important person, why aren't you doing it with me? And it's so interesting, right? Like, these are the most important person in your life you can take for granted so much easier. Like,
so
all
easy.
those questions poured out of me in the first 5
In
years
the
of our
beginning,
relationship.
yeah.
And now I'm like, I'm so talked out. I've been talking all day long. I don't fucking want to know. Like, I just want to unplug, read a book,
Right.
and not talk, not be out. And so remembering that I need to curate and make precious a certain amount of my energy so that I can turn that towards, because he's the most important person who I want to be and feel like I am that safe place, that if anyone sees him, I do. And I want
Right.
him to feel that in his bones. And there's also a place that he has to feed that in himself. So it's this constant dance, but I have to say that I'm really grateful when what he complains about, I'm able to get a reflection from somebody else that helps me understand him better. Because sometimes when you're so close to someone, there's a block to being able to understand how they feel the way they feel when you're just hearing a complaint. And then I hear
Right.
that complaint and I take that as criticism. And then there's a block to actually
Right.
hearing, what are they really saying? What do
Right.
they really need? But when you can hear it from somebody else, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
that's what I've been missing in my desire to understand this beloved of mine.
Yeah, exactly. So powerful.
Yeah.
Love it. That's why many colors in the rainbow make a prettier rainbow, y'all.
Yeah. So, tell us what you think in the comments. Thanks so much for being a listener. We love you. And please share the episode with someone who you know could benefit from it.
Cheers.
Thanks for tuning in. This episode was hosted by Tantric Sex Master Coach and Positive Psychology Facilitator Leah Piper, as well as by Chinese and Functional Medicine Doctor and Taoist Sexology Teacher Dr. Willow Brown. Don't forget, your comments, likes, subscribes, and suggestions matter. Let's realize this new world together.